standing by, ready to get you back to your absolute best. Find all that lovely Jimmy D-led content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and in the podcast section of nextroundlive.com. This message is sponsored by Jimmy Crypto Inc. and Jimmy Crypto for President.
Want more of the show? Download the app or visit nextroundlive.com for the latest podcast, The Mystery Fifth Hour, our Not For All Ages podcast, The Last Call, and the entire Double Down Media podcast family. All at nextroundlive.com and on the Next Round app.
If Hallmark is playing Christmas movies, that must mean it's Christmas time. Get your loved one the best present of them all this year at nextround.store. Everyone deserves good clothing, and no one deserves another Hoodiegate.
We talk about all the biggest games every Monday at 10:30 with Fox Sports analyst Joel Klatt. Presented by MyBookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND. If it is meaningful at all in college football, we cover it Mondays with Joel Klatt, presented by MyBookie.ag on the Next Round.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the Next Round to tell you about one of our favorite places for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is Hamburger Heaven since 1982. Hamburger Heaven has been serving Birmingham's best hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries, hand-spun milkshakes, and sandwiches made fresh to order. All of their ingredients are fresh and prepared daily. This includes their beef, always fresh, never frozen, hand-pattied each and every day. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, visit any of the 4 locations, Highway 280, Irondale, Gardendale, and Homewood.
Follow Scott Forrester on Twitter at scottforestertv.
Really not a better way to kick up a Monday than to see my man Brock Huard wearing Next Round gear. And that blue pops, man. I've always called you the Viking on the side because you look like guys that came over with the horns and the clubs and everything. Icelandic, maybe?
Yeah.
Nomadic?
Yeah, you and Mike Leach. You know, every time I would see Mike Leach at Pac-12 Media Days, they had this special function that Larry Scott decided to blow hundreds of thousands of dollars on and have us eat at the fanciest steakhouse in Beverly Hills because he was just that bad of a commissioner. And watching, a few of the coaches get a little warm. And in fact, during that time, I don't know if you also remember this, Larry Scott had private jets that took the coaches from Beverly Hills to ESPN. Again, hundreds of thousands of dollars, not well spent. But there were 2 different planes. One was the party plane and one was the nerd plane. And there was a very clear line of delineation amongst the Pac-10 coaches at that time, Pac-12 coaches. And you can try to figure out which one, I don't know, maybe Brooks and Sumlin and Chris Peterson and David Shaw were on. But anywho, Mike Leach would always be very entertaining at the special dinner we had with all you can eat food and drink. And he would look at me. I think he did this 3 years in a row, Lance. And he would mix his whiskey with his finger and he'd be drinking his whiskey and he'd come up to me and say the same thing for all 3 years. Are you on that show, The Vikings? You're on that show, The Vikings, aren't you? I'm like, Mike, you got to come up with better material. I mean, it was kind of funny the first time.
Yeah.
But like year 2, year 3, we got
I had never heard that story. I didn't know Mike Leach called you the Viking. You know, I said it early and often, so I'll come up with something new as well. I love the party plane and the nerd plane, and that's legitimate, right?
100% legitimate. Like those guys that wanted to talk ball and hang out. And I think, you could go back and look at the coaches in that time, and it was a very clear line. And then those that just wanted to carry over from the fun that they had at the media day and the media day dinner, and then more fun all the way to Bristol, Connecticut. And very, very different paths for those. And can I just say this too, Lance? Bro, wherever you had these made, this is like Lululemon soft. This is like the softest sweatshirt.
Yeah, we've got some.
I might sleep in this tonight.
Got some good partnerships. Our man Matt Wagner Team Sports. He hooks us up with a lot of stuff out of Tuscaloosa. It is really good stuff, and I've got more gear. Like that's one sweatshirt I don't have, and I love it. And we've got that in a gray as well. Yeah,
very good. Wow, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, shout out before we get into some quarterback moves. A quarterback has been benched in the NFL. I know that this will. Well, I'm not going to give any hints away. I'm gonna. So you haven't seen this. It's within the last.
I have not seen
within the last 5 minutes. As you think and you ponder on that, because I want to get your initial guess after 2 weeks who the quarterback that has been benched in the National Football League is. Unlocked is always brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. It's this simple. Football season's here. Winning season's here. Mybookie.ag will double your initial deposit when you mention next round. Very important. Both words, next round. Put that in, and they will double that initial deposit. Get on board right now at mybookie.ag. National Football League. A starting quarterback has been benched just 2 mere weeks into the season. Who do you think it is?
Daniel Jones.
It is not Daniel Jones. And I'm wondering, here's the hint I'll give you. What does it do to a really young quarterback's psyche? Because we don't consider Daniel Jones young anymore. He's won a playoff game and he's got a contract extension. But a really young quarterback, when you're struggling and you don't have a lot, we'll say a lot of weaponry around you.
Bo Nix? Is it Bo Nix?
It is not Bo Nix.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Will Levis? It's not Will Levis.
Sheesh.
It is
0 for 3.
Bryce Young has been benched. Dave Canales.
Yikes.
Yeah, look, it looks bad. I don't know what you get with Carolina. I think it's a bad product. You know, to get blitzed like they did against New Orleans. Now New Orleans goes out and does the exact same thing on the road to Dallas. So you just wonder how good is Dennis Allen's revamped New Orleans Saints. I don't know. He's been really bad, Brock, but I don't know if you – and obviously we'll start with NFL here, and then we'll transition our way into some college football on Unlocked with Brock Huard from Fox. But, you know, benching him this early in his career, you know, what's the message here?
Well, a couple things at play here. I guess number one, you guys were so close to it, right? Proximity-wise to Tuscaloosa and everything you guys do on your show. I love Bryce Young. I mean, did you guys over the course of his tenure there at Bama, was there ever a time that you would have thought go to the NFL and struggle like this?
No, and I'll tell you this, I really, and I've seen, obviously covering Alabama for a long time, seen some great quarterback play, and especially that blitz of quarterback play you saw at the end of Nick Saban's tenure. But I believe the most talented, and it was interesting because he never won a national championship. Now, if Mechie or Jamison Williams or one or both doesn't go down, they probably beat Georgia. With all that said, he never won a national championship. I still think he's the most talented quarterback to ever play at Alabama.
I would have, I don't know if I would have taken him number one because of the size, and we are seeing that. You know, now Kyler Murray has had a couple brilliant weeks, and yesterday was just outright phenomenal and perfect. And I'm sorry what he did to your Rams and Marvin.
Oh my
did to your
gosh!
Rams
Yeah, I do want to get to Kyler Murray in a little bit though, because I was blown away.
But I actually spent a few minutes thinking about this and been better at answering the question. There's a new coach and there's a new GM, and there's new people that have come in and can say, you know what, and I know, you know, both of those guys, Dan Morgan, the GM there, and Dave Canales, I know both of them personally, and I think they're going to come in and just say, hey, you know what, like, not my pick, not my guy, you know, and not have, you know, the challenge that the previous regime would have had when they take him number one. Like, he's got to work. He's and obviously he didn't, and there have been a whole bunch of other issues there in Carolina. I am still not done on Bryce Young. I'm gonna still hold out hope that as a young player, this is, you know, Carolina trying to say, hey man, you have gotten so beat up. You asked me earlier about what that does to a psyche. We've seen it. We've seen those scars, like the old Poison song, right? The wound heals, but the scar remains.
That's what Brett Michaels, one of the greatest lyricists since Robert Frost, right?
I mean, every rose has its thorn. We know that, and every wound heals, but the scar can remain. And there are some guys that develop scar tissue early, and they can just never function. The play, the confidence, whatever, the psyche never really fully comes back. So maybe that's Dave Canales looking at this, going, we're not going to do this. I'm not going to totally destroy him. Let's take him out of the inferno. Let's take him out of the fire, because he's not right. I mean, I was watching some of the throws yesterday, Lance. Like, he's making that throw in 5th grade. You know, when he was on the 7-on-7 circuit, he blew my brother away. Similar years as my nephew. So he got to see him. He's like, bro, this guy is unbelievable. He's accurate, strong. All of these things. Goes to Bama right from the jump, has a poise that is just so unique and never, ever just wavered and never flustered. And now he can't make throws that he could make when he was 10 years old. So, yeah, I think it got to a point where finally Canales and his GM said, we got to sit him. Like, we have got to take him out of this. and hopefully try to resurrect him off of the field.
Well, if you thought it couldn't get any worse as a Panthers fan, you've got Andy Dalton will be your starting quarterback this week. So have fun with that. You know, I always make it about the Rams. I would love for the Rams to pull in a guy like Bryce Young to be the guy that takes over for Matthew Stafford when you've got an innovative coach like Sean McVay. And I'm not taking any shots at Canales because Canales did some wonders with Baker Mayfield last year. But I would love to see a guy like Bryce Young. With all that said, and again, we'll do about 15 minutes on the NFL and we'll devote the rest of the show to college football. The Rams get run off the field, and it was early and often. We knew that Marvin Harrison Jr. would have a coming-out party sooner than later. I didn't realize it would be in the first quarter against the Rams in Week 2. But more impressive to me, look, I knew Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be good. Once Kyler Murray, it seemed like there was a blueprint on him. He got injured. There wasn't really that commitment to football. At least you heard that behind the scenes. I thought his best days might be past. Watching him yesterday, Brock, and I know this is one game, but even back to Buffalo on the road where they were up 17 early, Kyler Murray looked like an MVP yesterday. And I'm not just saying that like it being, hyperbole, exaggerations, whatever you want to call it. I thought he looked that good yesterday.
Yeah, that's a young staff. That is a dysfunctional organization. I mean, it just is at the very top. And that's not me saying it. That's all the surveys over the last couple years of the dysfunction. That is the lawsuits that have been going on. That is the hirings. That is the firings. But they've done one thing the last couple years, and that is hire young head coach, young coordinator, young offensive coordinator, and try to bring some of that youth to relate to some of these young players that they have drafted. And you do wonder, Lance, like Kyler hit such a valley. He had been such a success. He had never had failure. Like one of the winningest ever in Texas high school football, and winning the Heisman and all the success and one draft and all of it. And even in the NFL has had some bursts there where I think at one point they were like 8-2 or 9-1, right? Just got out of the gate so hot. And then a crippling injury, a devastating injury. You're going to come back from that injury. Are you ever going to be as dynamic? Are you ever going to be able to run and scoot with the quickness that you did that was so electrifying and got you drafted number 1? And, I think definitively that answer is yes. I mean, watching him move yesterday, and you watched it closer than I did. I mean, when he's at his best, is he not Dante Hall, the old, the human joystick?
Well, it's
right?
just, is there anything more frustrating? Because you got this with Russell Wilson, the old Russell Wilson that you saw in Seattle. And you've done everything as a defender. You've contained, you've stayed in your lane. Absolutely everything. And it's almost like once you get to these guys, it's almost like they're greased. Like you can't even pull these guys down. And Kyler Murray, I remember, Aaron Donald back in the day would just grab him and kind of flip him. But anybody else, I mean, dude is just, he can avoid anything.
His feet are so unbelievably quick. If you just measured, because he's kind of a short strider too, and he's a little guy, but his foot turnover and just his quickness and his elusiveness and things that obviously I was 180 on the other spectrum is a big heavy-footed blacksmith that never could create and do any of this stuff. So I'm always in amazement of the Jaden Daniels and the Caleb Williams and Lamar Jacksons and certainly when Kyler is right and now he's got some weapons. Now he probably feels a little bit like he did back in the day at Oklahoma. We're like, yeah, man, I got some dudes around me, and if I create and I improvise, they can do the same. And this Marvin Harrison cat is a pretty talented dude. And that Rams team, unfortunately, Lance, as you know, is so battered and hammered with injuries just about everywhere. And now you got San Francisco next week and staring down the real possibility of being 0-3.
Yeah, it's a great get-well game, right? Now 7.5-point underdogs against a San Francisco team, by the way, coming off a loss. So I want to ask you this. I've always been really fascinated by multi-sport guys. Because guys that have been dominant in their certain sport, I never really got to see them play another sport. Like Joe Mauer was supposed to be not only an incredible catcher for the Twins, guy was supposed to be a great all-state quarterback. Josh Booty, both baseball, football. Allen Iverson, talked to a recruiting guy 15 years ago, said the best guy he ever watched in high school football was Allen Iverson. Just his ability to play quarterback position, return kicks. So I wanted to ask you if you've ever seen Kyler Murray play baseball. Like, how good was that kid at baseball?
Well, a top 10 pick, so pretty damn unique, with his skill set, and you can just see it as a second baseman. Can you imagine how much ground he would have covered? And then there's the strength and the power of his legs. I mean, he looks like just, what could be as you build one and craft one, like, yep. That's why he was not only the number one pick in the NFL draft, number 10. You want a little fun trivia for you, by the way, as you bring up the name Joe Mauer. As you know, I think about myself early and often. In 1994, Peyton Manning was the Gatorade National Player of the Year. In 1995, yours truly was the Gatorade National Player of the Year.
Who's had the better career? I'm just wondering, like, if you had to guess.
In 1996, the Gatorade National Player of the Year was?
Joe Mauer?
Joe Mauer. In football and baseball. That's how elite that dude was back in the state of Minnesota coming out of high school. The number one player in the country as a football player, the number one player in the country as a baseball player.
Unbelievable.
So
like, who recruited you? Everyone in football?
Phenom. So I'm just sandwiched right between two absolute legends and Hall of Famers. And then in 95, there was a significant dip in talent, unfortunately, for the great people at Gatorade.
I was going to ask you, who all recruited Joe Mauer?
As a football player?
Yeah.
Gosh, I want to say it was Florida State. No, I want to say, and I might be wrong on that. You could look that up. But my mind seems to remember that I think Florida State, obviously in their heyday with Bowden and everything they had going on with Charlie Ward and all that stuff, I want to say maybe Florida State, and they were obviously elite, I believe, in baseball at that time too. So probably trying to make a pitch to do both of those things. But yeah, man, he was some kind of special, and we see that with Kyler. You see that with Mahomes. It's my encouragement all the time to any young player, just keep playing both sports. I'm trying to get my son to continue to play baseball. It's going to be really hard, and these doggone sports make it so hard. The travel baseball team and the 7-on-7 and the football side of it and the basketball we know is year-round as well with AAU. So it is really difficult to do. It's not so simple. And yet every draft, when you go look at the draft, or when I put together my college boards, Lance, and I'm looking at players, oh, yep, that guy was a 3-sport kid in high school. Yep, 3 sports. Yep, 3 sports. Yep, 3 sports. And, it's easier said than done because you do give on some skill set. But if you've got the, just the God-given abilities and the frame and the body to do it, man, play as many sports as long as you possibly can.
Well said. That is our friend Brock Huard here on Unlocked. It is brought to you by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. They will double that initial deposit. All you've got to do is mention next round. Very important. Next round, they will double the initial deposit at mybookie.ag. Pittsburgh, kind of a surprise at 2-0, maybe. You could say that with Minnesota with a backup quarterback in Sam Darnold, but the New Orleans Saints at 2-0. It's one thing to beat Carolina at home, who is now, if you're just jumping on, has benched Bryce Young. Andy Dalton will be the quarterback at least for the foreseeable future. But for the Saints to go on the road and do what they did to Dallas and have 35 on the board at half, I mean, they've scored 91 points in 2 games. They've only given up 29. Differential of plus 62. That's pretty incredible. What's going on with New Orleans through 2 weeks?
Well, we see this every year in the NFL. And I remember a couple weeks ago, I think it was a topic on our morning show, like who's going to be the pleasant surprise? Who's going to be the team that nobody's seeing? That, I think last year, Tampa Bay going into the year, power rankings before week 1, Lance, was like 30th, right? And we obviously, Dave Canales and Baker and that defense came together and make it all the way to the divisional round of the playoffs. So there seems to be kind of that team every year. I know people were looking at Tennessee and liking that roster. Obviously, up in Seattle, had looked at the roster of the Seahawks, and Geno's playing out of his mind and thought, this team's won 9 games the last 2 years, and they're going to be better coached with even more talent that's come in and some of their young players. So I'm not crowning the Seahawks at 2-0 like I'm crowning the Saints, because I think they're a little more veteran. Their culture's been a little more established, and Allen has been there. And man, I have always thought that Carr is just a uniquely gifted guy. I don't think he ever gets put on the list with Mahomes and Stafford and Josh Allen when it comes to like pure arm strength and throwing ability, Lance. But if you were to say to me, if I had to build like my Ryder Cup team of, okay, here's 7 guys, give me just the 7 best pure throwers, not quarterbacks, not winners, not anything else, just the thrower of the football, man. Give me the 7 best. There is no question that Carr is on that list in my mind. Like he can manipulate the football. He could throw from every arm angle. He's got a lightning quick release. He can throw it and stretch the field and do everything you possibly want on a football field. It just never fully come together over an entire season for really whatever reason. Maybe some of it the organizations he's been in, but yeah, he's got a gorgeous arm. They are humming, and they seem to be maybe the team that nobody thought going into this year could be a surprise. And they stay healthy, they might just be.
You don't have to speculate on the future for Tua, but after seeing that hit, he goes down. He came out and said he contemplated retirement in 2022. Just got a massive payday in the offseason. But just the simple fact that you're a father of a quarterback now, you played the position. Your nephews have played the position. Your brothers have played the position. I mean, if you sit down with a neurologist and the neurologist says, there is a chance if you get a couple of more of these, you're going to forget how to do routine things like brush your teeth by the time you're 35 years old. I know it's complicated. I know it's really the individual's decision. But, man, what goes on here? I mean, what kind of advice do you give to a quarterback that's in your inner circle that has suffered 3 massive concussions in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I had 2 in my professional career, Lance, and I can say definitively, and I think Steve Young would say the same thing with kind of the head injuries that in the end really curtailed, I think, the longevity of his career. I can say with 100% certainty for my skull and my brain that after my second one, it took a nothing hit to just kind of rattle my cage. Right? I mean, I remember playing in a preseason game, I believe some of my last action, because when I went back to Seattle, I hurt my back in training camp and that was it for me. So I think my last game was a preseason game with the Colts and we were like playing the Bengals. And I remember I had a little sprint out or play action. I threw it and I got hit and my head hit the ground. And I'm like seeing stars, like dizzy, like going, that hit was nothing. I took that hit in high school or junior high. I get up with nothing. That was a nothing burger. But I take this hit after a couple bruises to my brain, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, I shouldn't be like dizzy right now. That impact should not have forced that result. That to me will be the question for Tua. And I can't say it, and a doctor can't say it, and a neurologist can't say it, Lance, because every skull and every brain is just built differently. It just is. And it's why it makes this conversation so much more nuanced and complex. You tear your elbow, Tommy John. You tear an ACL, an MCL, a PCL, you tear a labrum, right? A rotator, you tear rib cartilage. Like, you got a pretty definitive plan and a pretty definitive, 50 to 60 years of data. Like, yep, this is what you can expect. Here's a recovery, here's the rehab, here's how you should come out of it. Head injuries, concussions, there is none of that because everybody neurologically is built differently. Every hit will impact people differently. But I would, through my own personal experience, be very curious to see what that next hit does. And I'm not talking about a massive blow like that. I'm just talking about a bump.
It wasn't a massive blow with Damar Hamlin. There was a good collision, but people talked about a forearm. There wasn't a forearm. It wasn't helmet to helmet.
No, but it was a full speed.
It was running, but 99% of guys
that
get right up, and I think there is something to what you said about once you have these multiple concussions. Let me ask you this, because maybe you and Mike discussed this. We haven't discussed it, or at least I don't remember discussing it. But the Guardian cap, like, I know aesthetically it looks terrible, but if you're a guy like Tua, why would you not wear that with the NFL allowing it? And by the way, how much do you know about the Guardian caps? Are they substantially that much better?
Don't know. I don't know about that kind of severe impact because he ran full speed into, which again, I would say to Tua, like, don't do that, man. Like Tom and Peyton and Drew, like, think about those guys. In the longevity they had in their careers, did you ever see? You never did. You never ever. And part of it's because Peyton couldn't run like his nephew Arch, who at 20.7 miles an hour, and absolutely was flying. I mean, you never saw those guys put themselves in harm's way. I mean, Tom Brady wouldn't. Again, he can't run, so that's. And I wouldn't say Tua is a great runner. So when you get out, man, get down, slide, protect yourself at all costs. Do not ever run yourself into that kind of contact. And I don't know the answer to that, Lance. That, again, falls into some of that nuance, that gray area. I know that guardian cap helps in all of the short area contact, all those linemen, all the running backs and linebackers, all the stuff they do in practice and training camp, all those little short area collisions. There is no question that is absolutely going to help. In a violent collision, running full speed down the field, I don't know if science even yet fully knows the answer to that. I know for Tua, two things to wrap this up. Number one, if he gets on that field again, the number one thing you have to do is protect yourself at all costs, and you can't always do it. And some of the other hits have come in the pocket, and were absolutely devastating and neurologically damaging. Number two, you're going to have to answer that question of, man, is there minimal impact that is starting to affect me? Because if that answer is yes, then I'd have a hard time patting him on the butt and say, go play, because your brain is telling you, it's been bruised, it's been damaged, and now you're just really, really playing with fire over the long term.
Not to get too personal, do you have forgetful moments? I do. I'm just getting old, but I do think I had.
Well, Ryan, Jim, I don't. I don't. That's not funny to joke around about, because that will probably happen. No, I don't think.
It will
honestly,
happen. We just don't know
it
when.
Will happen. Yeah, I can. No, at this stage of life, at 48. I don't think so. Like the recall, even my study on my boards and memorizations, and just the way my mind is working, I'm not feeling that yet. My back, my knee, yes.
Okay, I'll quiz you. If you wanted
right now,
nostalgic, really good merch from the city of Seattle, where would you go?
Oh, Simply Seattle. Yeah, Simply Seattle.
I was so excited when I got my box the other day. I really was. And the thing is, I grew up hating the Supersonics. Still incredible logo, the original. Washington's color scheme is just incredible, and I know you're obviously passionate Husky guy. I do want to make this transition to college football.
Right.
Unlocked is always brought to you by mybookie.ag. Again, winning season is here with football season. You can win with our friends at mybookie.ag. Player props, sides totals, parlays, teasers, everything you want. They will double your initial deposit. All you got to do is mention next round, put in that promo code, 2 words, next round, and they will double the initial deposit from our friends at mybookie.ag. No shock here. Michigan is making a change at quarterback ahead of their Big Ten opener when they host USC this weekend, 2:30 Central Time kick there. Alex Orji, who does have experience, very athletic guy. Obviously, they don't trust him to throw the football, or at least didn't last year with 0 attempts. Had 4 attempts this past weekend. What do you get? Do you just go out there and just let him play and see what happens?
Are we going to blow through a break? Don't we have a break usually at 25? I'm concerned about your brain or your diverticulitis. Are we good?
Yeah, I got about 2.5 minutes. Is that right, Rocky?
Yeah, a minute and a half.
Right.
A minute and a half, yeah. So do you want to save this for the other side?
No. I think I could do this in about 90 seconds. You have to, right? I appreciate the Warren story. It's awesome, but you're 11 to 14. And those 3 incompletions are all interceptions. It's just not working, right? You could just feel the tenor in the building. You can kind of just feel it and sense it. You're just not elevating. And I think they've got to take a page out of Kalen DeBoer's book and look at what they're doing down in Alabama with a guy. And this kid can run now. You put him next to Jalen Hurts, he's probably bigger. He maybe not quite as fast. He is stronger. The guy is an absolute horse. And what you're doing offensively and the weaponry and the lack thereof, you need that guy in that position to start to run. You need him to help the run game. You need him to help your offensive line. And for a USC team that sure tackled really well against LSU, that yes, has got people excited because they're playing some complimentary ball, you've got to present something new. You could not run out the same and expect a different result. So you're going to see, I'm going to guess, a bunch of QB run. You're going to see and ask him to be creative and try to cover some of the other ills they have and try to help them in the numbers game where traditionally what they were doing was nowhere near good enough.
Is there any truth to the fact that Alex Orji, when he was composing, modeling his body, he would look at old pictures of Brock Huard?
That is incorrect.
Okay.
No, that is incorrect. He was looking at the most beautiful mannequin you could ever find and saying, that's what I want to look like. And that's pretty much what he looks like.
It is Unlocked here every Monday on the next round. It is brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. They will double the initial deposit. Mention next round, 2 words, put it in the code, and they will double that initial deposit from our friends, mybookie.ag. There is a new number 1 in college football. Does our man Brock Huard agree? We will get to that and more college football right here on Unlocked on the next round.
There's only one Champy's world-famous fried chicken. Poor boy's tenders, full fried chicken plates, and a little bit of the Mississippi Delta with chicken on a stick and hot tamales. On your way to or from the big game on Highway 119 in Alabaster, stop by Champy's Chicken.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
I'm here with my good friend Jon Lunceford of Lunceford Furniture to tell you about special values on some super comfortable seating. What you got, John?
Lance, every year we stock up on great comfort items like Lazy Boy recliners and sofas so that our customers can be ready for fall and football. This year is no different. We've made special purchases that will deliver great value to Next Round listeners and give them the most comfortable seat in the house. And as always, we've got the best prices in the state on Lazy Boy and the best selection anywhere.
That's awesome. We all know from years of shopping with you guys that Lunceford Furniture is the home for Lazy Boy value.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. CoverCrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Hey, there's nothing worse than waking up to a plumbing problem. Don't get caught in a flooded house. Call the guys at Hemp Hill Services. Adam, Chad, and the team at Hemp Hill are the only ones I trust to fix it and fix it right the first time. Hemp Hill Services does it right and always at a fair price. For all of your plumbing, cooling, and heating needs, trust the name that Birmingham has trusted since 1954. That is Hemp Hill Services. Call now, 205-229-2090. That's 205-229-2090.
You never know what we're up to here at The Next Round. The easiest way to stay in the know with our antics and adventures is to follow The Next Round across all social media platforms at Next Round Live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Whether it's Dunaway sleeping in the studio, Tim and Lunceford breaking down the latest movie release, or Game Day Chronicles, we are here to keep you updated on the latest sports news while, of course, having just a little bit of fun. Follow at Next Round Live across all platforms to join in.
Hey, this is Matt Roth, the franchisee of Walk On Sports Bistro in Birmingham. With the kickoff of football season, come visit us at one of our 3 locations, Stadium Trace, Greystone, or Trussville. Come enjoy our scratch kitchen menu while watching one of our 80 TVs. Whether you're looking for a pre- or post-game celebration, game day, or date night, we've got you covered. It's all about the win at Walk On Sports Bistro. Walk On, where everybody needs a little playing time.
Happy football season. At The Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. CoverCrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
As much as things change, things remain the same. Georgia, no longer number one, but what is now number one is another SEC school, Texas, in year one. Brock, I don't have a problem with this. Georgia obviously struggled in Lexington, and Texas has looked like the most complete team in all of college football. Would you say right now, if I had to ask you, the number one team in the SEC, if you felt like you had to send a team out for your small village in Iceland back in the 1800s to make sure they're not completely dusted, one team from the SEC.
With Eric the Red? Yeah, with Eric the Red.
Yeah, who would represent?
Yeah, I think I put Texas down in my own little poll. So one of these outlets is asking a bunch of us to put together our top 12 teams. And for me this week, as I was sitting on the plane on an early flight out of Eugene at 5 a.m. Sunday morning, I just kind of looked at it and thought, yeah, I think Texas has felt the most complete. And obviously, going up to Ann Arbor and just dismantling them. And even if Michigan is limited, and who knows, at the end of the year, that may be a 4-loss Michigan team. It may lose this weekend to USC, but at that point, 100-something thousand people, they were still the defending champ and do have some really good personnel defensively, and they took them apart. I mean, that game could have been, I think, an even a bigger number in the end had they not missed a field goal and done a few things. So I think one of the best wins to date in college football, and looking as complete as everybody. Georgia is awesome. Georgia's going to be right there. If you had 22 starters, Lance, I think I've told you this before. One of the last exercises I do, and why I knew Oregon would eventually run away from Oregon State, was I just go to the playground. I look at my board and I say, okay, I'm back on the playground at Meeker Elementary in Puyallup, Washington in 5th grade. We're playing kickball. And am I going to take Eric or am I going to take Gina Korak? Am I going to take Dane Looker or am I going to take John Crack? Like, okay, I'm going to take that person and that person, that person. And I do that with the 22 starters on the team. And for Oregon and Oregon State, that meant going 21-1. The left guard for the Beavers would have started for the Ducks, but I think that's about it. It'd have been 21 other Ducks. And in the end, they run away and win by 30-something points, right? Even on the road. So if you were to do that with Texas and Georgia, it'd be a pretty fun exercise. I don't know those rosters quite well enough, and I'm not just going to, shoot from the hip, but I think it would be a pretty instructive and compelling exercise. Maybe you can ask some of your folks down south that have seen both of those teams up close and personal. But I bet you it would be a really, really close count with probably more Longhorns offensively and maybe a few more Bulldogs defensively, and it will set up for a pretty good matchup way down the road.
Don't think you're going to slide by with a Dane Looker reference, former Rams possession receiver, and just think that's going to go right by. So were you actually in school with him?
5th grade on, man.
Okay.
Yeah. We played junior high together. We played high school together. We played college together.
So I'm guessing a 4th and 3, under 2 minutes, you have one timeout left. Your old man was saying, throw it to Dane.
Yeah, Dane was pretty good. Now, he was only 158 pounds his senior year, soaking wet. So he was kind of a late bloomer. I think he was the last to get armpit hair out of all of us. You know how big a deal that was, right? Come on, Dane, when are you going to get some armpit hair? When are you going to hit puberty? So he was kind of a late bloomer, but man, when he bloomed, I think it bloomed into an 8-year NFL career. God bless him, through the Patriots and the Rams, and just an awesome, awesome guy that I stay in touch with to this day.
Okay, so your top 12, do they make you include a Group 5, or is it just your 12 best teams in college football?
Yep, just 12 best teams.
So
12 best teams.
Do you?
I don't have one there yet. I don't have a Group of 5 there yet.
Okay.
You?
So, well, no, I don't. I think UNLV is going to be that team at the end of the year. I really do. I thought I was really impressed. Down 14-3 in Lawrence, and I know Kansas isn't what I thought they would be with a healthy Jalen Daniels. He's turning the football over too much. But what Barry Odom has done with that team, I mean, it's a different culture. I said this a couple of weeks ago, watch out for UNLV. I'm going to stick with them. We'll see what happens there. But I wanted to ask you two things. First off, does USC make your top 12?
Yes.
Okay.
USC makes my top 12. Yep. I want to say they were 9-ish.
Okay.
Higher than
that
they
sounds
are
about right.
We'll 11.
Learn a little bit more this week going on the road. Still a really good Wolverine defense. More interesting to me is the Big 12. Because I think we've got a pivotal game coming up this weekend. And, I guess the status of Cam Rising is still questionable. But that game in Stillwater against Oklahoma State, I think the winner of that game, there's a good chance they play for the Big 12 championship. But on the other side, Kansas State undefeated, completely dominated Arizona on Friday night. But now they've got to go to Provo. Pretty good BYU team. Where does the Big 12 stack up for you right now?
Yeah, the Big 12, I was just looking at some numbers before we jumped on, Lance, and obviously the AP poll, and when the committee comes out, I mean, the SEC is so top-heavy. I mean, so unbelievably dominant. I didn't have Mizzou. To me, I don't know. I like them. To me, I don't think Missouri is that much different than Oklahoma State or Kansas State, to be honest with you, and I think that showed this weekend, even at home against Boston College. It went down to the wire. But the top heaviness of it with Texas and Georgia and Bama and Ole Miss and Tennessee is scary, 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 and we're going to learn a lot about them but they are dynamic. Big 12 is kind of that really, well, it's what both presidential candidates are trying to clamor for, right? The middle class. We're going to bring up the middle class, right? Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State I put in there. I mean, they're all kind of, right there. And I was listening to my buddy Chris Peterson talk and say, gosh, if you tried to make a case, like who's it going to be? If you had to right now put your own money, and I don't know if you've done a futures bet on the Big 12 or not, Lance, I would not recommend it because I think it's that wide open. But, you could make a case for Utah. You can make a case for K-State. You can make a case for Oklahoma State. I think you can make a case for Iowa State, whose freshmen last year have all grown up a little bit. And that win over Iowa, to me, was pretty freaking big time to do that, especially in the second half. Little Rocco Becht, Anthony's son, is fun, and now a third-year starter. And so I think it's a great case in just kind of that middle class, and probably going to get one. I don't know if you're going to get two into a playoff because I think they'll cannibalize a little bit of one another. But it's going to be fun. In fact, I'm going to be in Stillwater, and I do expect Cam Rising to play. I think they were guarded with him and cautious with him, and my expectation is that he's going to be healed up, and they have to have him.
Yeah, the biggest
no Cam Rising. You don't.
I agree. I dogged out Isaac Wilson probably unfairly, but the backup quarterback looked really good against Utah State. Did not look good at all against Baylor. Actually, was pretty effective against Utah State. Different animal altogether when we're talking about the competition. But the biggest game in the state of Oklahoma is actually in Norman, where Josh Heupel heads back to his own stomping grounds. And you hate to see situations like this because I can't imagine anything that would get you on the wrong side of the dub. I don't think that there's anything that can happen there. And obviously Josh Heupel, former offensive coordinator for Bob Stoops, the way that went down, it didn't sit well with him. And there's been this kind of, it's just been kind of hovering. Like when Heupel gets back to Norman, what's going to happen? Heupel seems like he's got a machine of a team that maybe, I don't want to say can name their score, but watching Oklahoma after the pick six against Tulane, that was a one-possession game. Their offensive line is shaky. Jackson Arnold really under fire, hasn't been put in that situation. Twofold here. Do you think Tennessee will run it up? And B, if you were in Heupel's situation with the way that whole thing went down, if you had an opportunity to run it up, what would you do?
I think he's not going to, sub and step off the accelerator anytime soon, right? I mean, and not only is that like an Oklahoma thing, but it's a big stage. I think everybody's wondering, out the gate here, my gosh, these guys have been unstoppable. And we've seen Lane do it, right, at Ole Miss. And I think Heupel is an offensive mind of the same accord and a play caller. And like, why would I ever stop, because I think, when that committee gets together, and I had a fun chat with Mike Riley while I was back in Corvallis, and I'm glad that Mike Riley's on that committee. And they've already, as you can imagine, practiced and doing some things to get themselves ready to go when they put their first rankings out. But I believe margin of victory is important. I believe scoring differential is important. I believe when they put all those numbers up there, and there's a reason that these coaches, even in these non-conference games, have put a lot of points on the board because, well, when they're crunching numbers and they can't remember everything, Lance, and the eye test kind of goes away. And I sat in that room down there in Texas as in a mock committee, like, okay, here's the numbers. And yeah, those numbers favor that one pretty significantly. So maybe because of past history, but most importantly, because it's a perception business and numbers do matter. Yeah, I don't think he would step off the accelerator and play nice whatsoever.
I want to let you know I was watching you this past weekend, so I've got a couple of questions on that game. I was laying, by the way, 16.5 with Oregon, so that worked out well for me. I do want to give Dillon Gabriel a little credit because I said this going into the Boise State game. The offense isn't as in sync as it was maybe the last couple of years, especially last year, but I was ready for Oregon to have that coming out moment. Like, this is a much better Oregon team than we've seen through 2 weeks. I think we saw that not only running the football, limiting what the Beavers did on the ground, but Dillon Gabriel, he's not Bo Nix. He's still athletic. You saw the one really long run. He's completing 84% of his passes after the game in Corvallis, eight total touchdowns and no picks yet. I don't think we're giving him enough credit just based on what we've seen in Will Stein's offense the past couple of years.
Yeah, we've kind of mentioned a few guys here in passing our programs. We mentioned Barry Odom is going to be in the Power Four. What he's doing at UNLV, I felt that way last year. We had them in the Mountain West Championship game, and remember what he did in year one, right there, year one at UNLV, and like turning them around that quickly with all of these transfers and everything else, and getting them to the championship game. And yeah, Barry Odom's going to get another opportunity, and he's going to be even better for it. I don't know where that is. You can name a few jobs I think are going to be coming open in the Power Four and in these major conferences. His name should be up there. Will Stein will be another one. I don't know if it's going to be Power Four necessarily, or if it's the choices and decisions that he's got to make as he evaluates and looks at all of that. He's the OC at Oregon. He is awesome. He is young. He is innovative. He's creative. And what he did with Bo Nix, and obviously, these numbers that you're mentioning right now. And Dylan, I've sat with a lot of guys. It was the same way with Bo last year. And obviously, when you've started 50 games and you're 23, 24 years old, it's different than the 18 and 19-year-olds we spoke to, 20-year-old maybe, 18 years ago when I started this. There's just a level of maturity. And man, I don't think I've written down more quotes from a player in our meetings than I did with Dylan Gabriel last week, of just understanding and winning and losing and perspective, and the role model he is in Hawaii, following in the footsteps of Tua and Marcus Mariota, and just the pride that they take in that, and just the toughness that he displays. He is one tough, competitive sucker, and you're feeling that. And Oregon is a team, and they'll get Ohio State in a couple weeks. I'm going to see them a bunch. I'm going to see them with Michigan State on a Friday night. I'm going to see them at Purdue on a Friday night. I won't get to see the Buckeyes. That'll be somebody else calling that game in Eugene, Oregon. But they're one of the teams that when they play to their ceiling, Lance, when Georgia plays to their ceiling, when Texas plays to their ceiling, when Oregon plays to their ceiling, they're going to be one of the last few teams standing. Now, can they do that? Can they do it consistently? That's the beauty of a college football season, or do it when it matters the most, on the biggest stage. But their ceiling, their top end talent ceiling, is right up there where they were preseason picked to be in the top 5.
Did Dylan bring up his dog in the meetings? His dog that passed away?
No, but he brought up his minivan. He drives a minivan.
I did not know that. Please give me a little backstory, a little context on the minivan.
He just said it's kind of a manifestation of me. It's kind of emblematic of who I am. I got a lot of family that comes in. I got a lot of teammates.
He doesn't have kids, though.
No kids. But dude, Lance,
Are you a minivan guy?
Where's my wife? She's not around here. If I could be a minivan guy, when I go on the road and we do any family trips, what is the one vehicle that I rent? And I don't even care what the kids say or what Molly says. We're renting a doggone minivan. You know why? Because you can hit that button and the doors open, and you get easy ingress and egress. Do you know how much storage you get in the back of a minivan too? Like, minivans are the bomb.
Hey, 1995.
And the fact that Dylan Gabriel, yes, drives one in Eugene is just perfect.
The 1995 classic Get Shorty, Cadillac of minivans. Danny DeVito was driving one after Chili Palmer had his out there.
Would you drive a minivan? Could you drive a minivan?
I will drive anything free. I've gotten to that point. I've never driven one, but yes, I would.
You've never rented one? You've never driven one, huh?
I had a friend that worked for Future Brands, which is the family of Jim Beam and Booker's and Basil Hayden. He had a minivan as a liquor rep, so they could store all their liquor and merch in the back. That makes sense, right?
Okay, so out of Rockstar, Dunaway, Brown, or Lance, which of the 4 most likely? Which brand fits the best?
Okay, well, here's the way. So Dunaway would be forced back in the day with younger kids. Rockstar has what is Cord now? A little over 1?
2.5.
2.5. He's 2.5 now, but he's got another one on the way. So he's got 2 kids under 3.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, look, we're out of that game.
I'd be into it. Doesn't matter to me.
If we gave you a free minivan, you'll drive it, right?
1,000%. Today, I'd leave a lot
with racing stripes on it. So, hey, Brock, if I asked you third best team in the SEC.
Okay. Obviously, Texas, Georgia, 1-2. I mean,
that's tough, isn't it?
It is tough.
You know who your boy Klatt went with? And ask the question a different way, but the way he followed up this, I know who his number 3 team is.
I like Kalen DeBoer. I'm biased.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I watched Kalen DeBoer the last 2 years at Washington go 14-1 and 11-2. 14-1 and 11-2. And I watched him develop people. I watched his be total voice of poise. So I've seen him do it. I've seen Lane kind of like a little bit like this, and his team's a little bit like this. I've seen Heupel's teams. I haven't seen that with Josh yet. They've been fairly one-dimensional and not complementary. I don't think the front for Alabama defensively, and this, is anywhere near some of the freak shows that they have had for a long, long time. But I just I don't know, man. I watched that game and they just dismantled a Wisconsin team. Again, it's going to have 4 or 5 losses, but you go into that venue and nothing was too big. So I'm going to go Bama.
Okay. I think I would go Bama too. Klatt went Tennessee. We'll learn a little bit more about Tennessee this way. I think it's one of two things. I think either Heupel does lay it on the gas and they win that game going away, or I think they could be in for a surprise. You just never know week to week in the SEC. I did think it was funny sitting down, very low-key weekend. By the way, all my weekends have gotten low-key. I just love hanging out on the couch with the dogs, sometimes just solo, just watching as many games as I possibly can.
How'd you do this weekend? I always love to ask you how you did.
So our total, we were 13-7 over the weekend. Yeah, so very good, 65%. We'll take that.
So you take that all season long.
So a buddy of mine came over, Bama fan, and it was just me and him in the basement. And sitting there watching, he's like, "Man, and I think Bama at this point's up. I think it was 21-3 at half. I just wish Alabama had more methodical drives." And I brought this up to him, and then I brought it up to Klatt. It is so much more difficult. Like if you're trying to have consistent methodical drives against really good defenses in the SEC, if you have the ability to have explosive plays with great athletes all over the place, that is like the most dangerous thing. If you're a defensive coordinator, how bad do you fear a team like Alabama that has 4, 5, 6 guys on that offense that can have, including the quarterback, they can have an explosive play at the drop of a dime?
Tell your basement dweller buddy, like, bro, do you not know sabermetrics?
Up 21-3, by the way.
Have you not studied analytics, my friend? Do you not care to read and look at all the numbers that tell you, both at the collegiate level and the professional level, clearly without debate, and there's not even a conversation, that it comes down to explosive plays? You put together an explosive play on a drive. Chip Kelly was telling me this like 3-4 years ago, both coming out of the NFL and back at UCLA. And he's like, Brock, listen, you get like one explosive and it's X% of, a differential between scoring or not scoring. You get 2 explosives, it's almost 100%. So yeah, not only the threat and the psyche and that what that does to your opponent, that at any time you could throw a haymaker that knocks him out, and that affects your opponent psychologically, then just look at the data. And oh, by the way, look at Kalen's offenses at Fresno State and at Washington. What were they built on last year with Michael Penix? Was it, oh man, this is fun, this is a great 12-play methodical drive? No. It was built on creating matchups, taking your shots, hitting the explosive plays, pushing the ball vertically to not only affect the psyche, but know the data game. That the more explosive you are, the better chance you have of scoring, and obviously the better chance you have of winning.
Okay, before we get out of here on Unlock, which is always brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag, put in that promo code next round, 2 words, you're going to get your initial deposit doubled from our friends at mybookie.ag. I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to circle in conference because I want to be on the front end of this. But if I just ask you 3rd best team in the SEC, you went to DeBoer in Alabama. If I ask you 2nd best team in the Big Ten,
It's Oregon or Penn State, obviously.
If USC was to win by 21 in the Big House, it wouldn't change anything?
Yeah, I just don't know depth-wise, especially in their offensive line. Like, they're one injury away on their O-line to being really, really challenged. You could probably say the same for Oregon because, they were stable this week. They played only 5 guys for the first time and didn't rotate people. First-year coordinator there at Penn State that's going to get better over the course of the year. Probably comes down to, Oregon's got to play Ohio State at home, right? They've got to go to Michigan. They've got they got Washington. They've got, I think, and so does SC. So I just off the top of my head, I'll probably land on Penn State. just from a scheduling standpoint.
Okay.
And I don't have all three laid out right in front of me, but from a scheduling standpoint, my perception is they've got a more favorable road than the other two.
You know Kurt Signetti, and he goes from James Madison to Indiana, and I watched a ton of Indiana Saturday night. Two reasons, because Indiana was a big play, -3.5. The other reason, there wasn't a lot of great games on, but I was so impressed. Now, Curtis Rourke is a guy that I would watch on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights for the Ohio Bobcats, but he's a guy that's been a 6-year starting quarterback now in college football. He's completing almost 75% of his passes. He has yet to turn it over. Their third down conversion rate on the road was insane this past weekend. I start to look at their schedule. I think they can open 10-0.
I looked at that schedule too. That's so funny that you did that. I looked at that too after that game. I thought, man, this was a total take apart. And UCLA is bad and struggles.
Right. They haven't played anybody.
Yes, but my gosh, were they buttoned up? And my gosh, was he furious with just a holding call on the sidelines? And my gosh, is his just demand of detail with some cool pieces that have come in there, and they've been really impressive. So I did the same thing that you did. I mean, if Oregon or SC had that schedule, then that would have been a much easier answer to your question.
It would have been.
Penn State, because Indiana is very, very favorable.
Yeah, I really, and I brought this up today, and I know Maryland could beat them, and at Northwestern, and Nebraska, obviously, and Washington, and at Michigan State. But those are all games that are going to be close to a picket if Indiana's not favored in those games. So I just think it's really interesting when you look at this Big Ten, and you talk about how top-heavy and how ridiculous the SEC is. You know, we're trying to figure out who – at the beginning of the season, we were like 3 Big Tens definitely, maybe 4, maybe 5 if it was a great season. But I think it's fascinating when you start to look at USC and Nebraska and now Indiana. And possibly even Rutgers. Rutgers going on the road this week to Virginia Tech. You know, they win that game, they're 3-0.
Yep. No, there is definitely that kind of burgeoning middle class there as well, probably led by Nebraska's defense and this little freshman phenom, not little, a very known freshman phenom that right now in Raiola is living up to the expectations. So we knew this, Lance, coming in. I think we talked about it on Labor Day, that this is going to be a different, for you and me and for everybody in college football, this is going to be a different journey. That 12-team playoff changes so much of the dynamics. It's not just about 4. It's not just going to be 4 blue bloods. It's not just going to be the 4 power brokers that we all kind of know halfway through the year. This is going to be a fascinating journey by conference, by middle class, by who rises, who stays healthy, and still some unbelievable intrigue with some of those teams like Penn State and USC and Oregon and those teams at the top. So it's going to be a fun ride this season.
One of my more favorite teams to watch early in the season has been Cal. Quick answer, because we're getting out of here. Does Florida State drop to 0-4 with visiting Cal, the most physical team they've seen all year, only a 2-point underdog right now on the road at Tallahassee?
That's a long trip, my brother. That is another long, long trip for those boys. They got to figure this out. There is no reason the teams on the Pacific Ocean should be playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So I think Florida State finally gets it done. How about that? Finally.
He is Brock Huard. This is Unlocked, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Stay tuned. More Next Round coming up right now.